There is a park called Yellowstone, a classic of the West. Of all the parks in all the world, the oldest and the best. Welcome back to My Travel Window, where we help you explore the world and, over the course of the next few episodes, explore the national parks of the United States. Stay to the end and hear the Yellowstone story behind this fascinating picture. I'm recording this video on March 1st, 2022. That's a significant day. You see, it was exactly 150 years ago today that the first national park in the world came to be. It's a uniquely American idea that's now expanded to the rest of the world. On March 1st in 1872, the United States established Yellowstone National Park. In the summer of 1972, I became a summer employee at Yellowstone National Park. Another young lady also became a summer employee that year. We met at the park. 2 years later, she was my wife. So Yellowstone holds a very special place for me. And when we started on our RV journey across the United States, we knew the first place we had to go was Yellowstone. Mark Twain once said that there were only 4 uniquely American cities different from all the rest. I think of the 63 U.S. national parks and hundreds of national parks in other countries, I think Yellowstone ranks up there among the most unique and a place that every American who wants to see the iconic parks ought to go. Where is it? Yellowstone is in the far northwest corner of Wyoming, with about 4% of the area overlapping into Idaho and Montana. By the way, the name comes from the yellow color of the rock on the sides of the canyon through which the Yellowstone River flows. There are 5 entrances to the park, as you can see here: north, south, east, west, and northeast. The figure 8 loop road that is the major transportation through the park can take anywhere from 4 hours to 7 hours to drive. So it's possible to see the park, quote unquote, in a day. But most people, me included, would say it takes 3 days to adequately see the dozen or so top sites within the park and actually experience them. Yellowstone is famous for 3 things. 1, unmatched thermal features. Everybody's heard of Old Faithful Geyser, and it's not the only geyser. There's many geysers, paint pots, and hot springs. It's also famous for abundant wild animals, notably bison, elk, moose, bears, coyotes, and wolves. It's also the home to spectacular water features in addition to the geysers. Upper and lower falls of the Yellowstone, Yellowstone Lake, which is the largest lake in North America above 7,000 feet and the second largest alpine lake after Lake Tahoe. Let's talk about the point of our episode here. RV camping within Yellowstone itself, that is, staying overnight within the park, is quite difficult for several reasons. First, crowds. Yellowstone has over 4 million visitors a year. It's one of the top 6 most visited national parks in the United States. The vast majority of these are spread over the 4 summer months. 2, to go along with those crowds, there are relatively few campsites of any kind within the park. As you can see from this picture, there are about 2,200 total campsites available within the boundary of the park. Not only that, there is a severe shortage of what might be called big rig sites, the sites that would accommodate the larger modern RVs. Only one location within the park has full hookup sites. Most sites will accommodate a combined length of 40 feet, as you see here. For some, the limit is 25 or 30. Yellowstone is skewed towards small, self-contained rigs. 4. Two of the entrances, the east and northeast, have steep, curvy roads that intimidate many RV drivers. Make sure you're ready if you plan to come this way, and check to make sure the road is open if you come through the northeast entrance. It's usually not open until late June or early July because of snowpack. And 5, once in the park, almost all roads are 2 lanes, usually narrow, and not designed to be RV friendly. The good news is that there are a vast number of RV campgrounds at each of the 5 entrances to the park, particularly at West Yellowstone. Most are full hookup. West Yellowstone is somewhat of a destination resort in and of itself. If you're towing a car, your best bet is to park your RV just outside the park and use the car to explore the park itself. We stayed at a park near Henry's Lake, shown here, perhaps an hour's drive from the park, and toured the grounds on our Can-Am motorcycle. As any biker will tell you, you notice much more from a bike than you do from the inside of a vehicle, and our trip was special. Although it was particularly intimidating to meet a bison on the road when you're on a bike. This happened to us in Yellowstone and again in Custer State Park, where this particular photo was taken. Before I get to my 6 suggestions for how to have a memorable trip to Yellowstone, let me invite you again to subscribe and like our videos. It simply tells YouTube that people like the content and gets us out to more people. Thank you in advance. Here are my 6 suggestions for a memorable trip. 1. Don't speed through the park. The slower you travel, the more you will enjoy it. Speed limit inside the park is 45 at the most, and less at every major intersection or traffic area. Don't push that. Roads are curvy, they're tree-lined, that limits sight distances. Anytime in the mountains you run the risk of hitting a deer, but at Yellowstone, it's more likely to be a bison that's going to step out in front of you. 2. The major scenery is along this section of highway, and I would make sure that you do at least this full section. Everyone goes to Old Faithful here in the lower left. But my favorite parts of the park are the upper and lower falls of the Yellowstone and Hayden Valley, the best place to see wildlife. So see at least these 5 sites: Old Faithful, Grand Prismatic Spring, Lake Yellowstone, the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, and Hayden Valley. Number 3, keep your camera at the ready and stay alert for wildlife. And whenever you see cars slow, be particularly alert, because wildlife sightings are the major cause of most traffic slowdowns, like this sequence of pictures of a bull elk and his harem. 4. The best picture is not necessarily the closest. You can get a good picture of Old Faithful and Grand Prismatic Spring by standing next to them. But the best picture is often from the Geyser Basin Trail looking back at Old Faithful, or from the overlook looking down on Grand Prismatic Spring. 5. Respect the animals. As new employees in 1972, we had an introductory safety talk from one of the rangers. He explained that in the first 100 years of the park, there were 3 human deaths caused by wild animals. He told the story of 2 of them. In one case, some tent campers camped in an area closed because of bear activity, mistake 1. They left their food in the tent, mistake 2. When they came back after dark, they found a mother bear and her cub in the tent. They decided to go into the tent and try and take the food from the bear and chase her away. Mistake 3 proved fatal. The second incident came when a tourist was not satisfied to photograph a male bison lying down and came over to kick it to get a standing photo. The bison stood and charged. The moral of the story is that in 100 years and millions of visitors, there were only 3 animal deaths, and 2 of those were incredibly stupid. So, if you respect the animals, you will not be in danger in Yellowstone. Bear sightings are less likely than they used to be for the protection of both parties. What rangers discovered is that bears who used to come to the road and beg for food became dependent on the handouts. When tourist crowds dwindled in the fall, the bears were slow to be motivated to hunt for food. Winter came, they didn't have enough fat to survive hibernation. So therefore the rangers adopted this motto: a fed bear is a dead bear. Never feed any of the animals. It does them no help. By the way, the bear is the third most dangerous animal in the park. Two other species are equally capable of killing you and are less predictable than a bear. As part of our picture at the end, I'll tell you the other two. 6, and last, if you can, visit Yellowstone in September. It is true that snow can come early in Yellowstone. But not only is the summer crowded, it's hot, often mosquito infested in areas. Just after Labor Day, the crowds thin steadily. The weather is more delightful, animals more active. But, a word to the wise, September is moose mating season, so be particularly careful when hiking during that time of the year. Which leads me to the closing final story. This photo was taken in a campground in Grand Teton National Park, just a few miles south of Yellowstone, but it is meaningful to us because of an incident that happened to my wife and me during our time in Yellowstone decades ago. Our summer was winding to an end. We decided to go on a mid-September hike and picnic. As we came to a small, brush-filled ravine, a bull moose came crashing out of the brush and up the other side. Reaching the top, he stopped to look over his shoulder menacingly at the two of us. He froze, we froze. Now this might be the time to tell you the ranger had warned us that the two animals in Yellowstone more dangerous than a bear were the bison and the moose. We began to slowly back away and gave the moose a wide berth. When he was safely out of sight, we finally exhaled and began to relax. We walked for a little while further. Then we happened to catch a glimpse of something out of the corner of our eye. The moose had followed us and was watching, head down and facing us from a ridge just above us, like this photo. The thought sends a shiver through me to this day. Yellowstone, oldest and best. Next time, the gorgeous neighbor park of the Grand Tetons. Until then, safe travels.